big and we just bought this hog. Or there is no way in the world that my hog's ever going to get big enough to meet that minimum. So make sure you kind of have an idea of when that show is, how big the size or age that we need to have. You know, most of the time, anywhere from 6.5 to 7 months of age is where those hogs need to be to reach the appropriate weight and kind of meet in the middle of that minimum and maximum, if you will, and therefore allowing you to be successful. Again, have your game plan. Know your days that it's going to take, or from purchase date until your show. Know when that fair is. The other big thing that you need to think about is a vaccination program. Find out from that breeder what they have been vaccinated for. Because if we think about buying a pig from this breeder and we buy a pig from this breeder, we want them to have or be on the same vaccination schedule, or that they've had the same vaccines. It's no different than, you hate to talk about the dreaded thing right now of being COVID, but at the same time, we want to make sure we know what kind of vaccines we've had. We want to know who all's had it, who all hasn't, especially as we get further on down the road. And our show pigs are much of the same. We want to get them on the same type of protocol and find out what they've had and what the others may need. When you get ready to bring that pig home, whether you went to a live auction or whether you went to bought him online and you picked him up, try to have some type of a trailer or a box, particularly as we think about in these winter months and things that are draft free, that's warm, because we're kind of giving a little bit of a shock to that baby pig's system, if you will. We pick up that baby pig and we get ready to take him home and we throw him in a little wire cage in the back of the truck and we drive 60 miles an hour in a 30-degree temperature. He's not going to have the best experience in the world. And not only that, but he's probably going to try to get a little bit sick when we get home. So let's try to take care of them from the get-go. Separate those pigs unless they were pen mates, at that guy's farm or at that sale or something like that. That way we don't have a bunch of fighting going down the road and things like that. Don't try to do, we want to try to keep them get a good start. We don't want to start on a bad start, and little things like that can make a huge difference in the success of that show pig or making that transition process a whole lot easier. We say on the bottom line there, if you wouldn't ride back there or ride in there, why don't we ask our pig to do it either? We think about housing. When we get those hogs home, first and foremost is clean. We try to keep everything as clean as possible. Draft free, we don't want just a great big wind tunnel kind of blowing through there or through their house or through their pen. Try to keep it as temperature controlled as you possibly can. You do the best you can. I mean, I live here in Oklahoma. And I've helped kids over the years, and we have some that are in Smidley huts and outside, and boy, we pack a lot of wheat straw in there to try to keep them warm. We've got other pigs that are inside of a barn that we're able to keep a little more temperature controlled, but even with that, here the last little bit, we've had some crazy temperatures, particularly for Oklahoma. One morning we had a negative 25 wind chill. We don't necessarily do that in Oklahoma very often. I think they had to go back to the 1800s to find it to be even close to that. So, we tried to do as best as we could. One thing I will say is if you're using wood chips, you can always hook up a heat lamp and things like that. If you're using straw, please don't use a heat lamp. If that thing busts, you've got a chance of catching that straw on fire, and we've got a real big problem after that. So, but again, throughout this presentation, you'll hear a lot of things about if you wouldn't ride in that back of that truck or in that trailer, why do we make our show pig? If you wouldn't sleep there, why do we make our show pigs do that? We got to think of these things as our buddies, our friends, and yet at the same time, we're going to turn around and ask them to be athletes as we get them trained to go to a pig show. So little things like that is some things to kind of keep in your mind as we go through this season and go through, showing our pig. Temperatures, and these are just some numbers. Not always are they completely attainable or achievable, if you will, but as babies are young, and we talk about in nursery buildings and things like that, we try to keep it somewhere in that 82 to 88 degrees. And then as they grow, obviously, they can handle different temperatures or lower degrees, if you will. The big thing on this is we want to try to keep them warm. I mean, if our waters are freezing up, or at the same time, if it's in the middle of the summer and it's 105 outside, we've got to try to have them a place to where they can have access to some free flowing air, be it fans, try to keep it cool with some shade or some things like that in order to try to keep those pigs comfortable. When you get that project home, again, we've talked about, before, when you get them home, having a clean, dry, draft-free type of a pen or a type of a scenario. Prior to that, though, we need to make sure that pen's clean. Those of you that have showed hogs in seasons past and things like that, if they're on concrete, it doesn't matter how long it's set empty or anything like that. Does not hurt to go back and power wash that or wash it down good. Even if you do nothing more than pour some Clorox bleach on it, just try to keep it disinfected. Disinfect it again real good before we get ready to put our hogs in there. One thing when you get that pig home that I recommend is that we actually hand feed that pig or self feed the first 3 or 4 days, because many of you may use a self feeder. We use self feeders from time to time. The thing about a self feeder is a lot of them will hold anywhere from 100 to 200 pounds of feed in that feeder. Our little 35 to 45 pound baby pig, when we first get him home, or maybe 50 pounds, it's very, very difficult to see how much that hog is consuming from morning to night and night to morning if we've got 150 or 200 pounds in a feeder. However, if we put him on a trough and we're able to put 1 to 2 pounds in that trough, it's a little easier to tell if he's consuming feed, if he's putting away feed, if he's hungry, did he just spill it all, or if it's all piled up there and he didn't touch his feed. We may need to look back at him and see and check our health and things like that. Make sure we don't have any kind of scouring or any kind of coughing, runny noses, those things like that. As we do that and checking twice a day, we'll talk a little bit later more about health as far as, some things to look out for. But that also gives us a time to start making that pig our buddy. One thing, I've got a 9-year-old, and we take those little 3-gallon buckets, and we turn that thing upside down, and he sits on it. He sits in the pen with that hog. Around here, his favorite thing to do is marshmallows. He likes to give him a marshmallow and get to know him, and they become friends. After that, after a little while of that, where they kind of start trusting one another, then we'll get the brush out. We'll start doing some light brushing, and then we'll actually get a show whip or a broom, something like that, and let them kind of start following around with their head. And therefore, it's starting to kind of teach that hog to walk with his head up. Those things are very, very crucial, very, very important to make it successful later on down the road. Because if that hog doesn't basically trust you, then it's hard for us to ever get to be able to show him. So working with that hog with a brush, your hand, taking that whip or that broom and allowing them to chase it and walk around and kind of get their head up is very, very important and very, very crucial thing to do in the early stages. Things to look out for as far as a daily checklist, if you will. Are your hogs comfortable? Is the temperature okay? Is the bedding in there dry? Is it clean? We pick and clean pens morning and night. And I think that's just, for one, it makes our wood chips go further. If we try to clean out the manure and clean out the wet spots morning and night. The other thing about that is it allows you to get in there and find out if that hog's feeling okay. If you get in with a scoop shovel or a pick fork or anything like that, and that hog lays in the back of the pen or in his house the whole time and never comes out, he's not feeling good. Something's wrong. Either he's sick or he's running temperatures, fixing to get sick, but we've got something going on with him. Get him up, walk him around, see if he's limping, see if he's walking correctly, those type of things like that. The earlier we catch things, the better. When we think about runny nose, coughs, tilted heads, things like that. We can be talking about a variety of things that may be wrong, and yet waiting to see if it's any better the next day is not the way to look at it. We need to jump on it, be active about it. Something we may need to call our veterinarian, find out if there's an antibiotic we need to use, something like that. Other things can be skin irritations or rashes. A lot of times you'll see hogs that get mange or things like that, and whether that be because of straw or be it because of wood chips, or maybe he had a little bit of that when we bought him and now it's gotten a little worse. But those are some things that we need to kind of tend to look at. And if we're checking our hog twice a day, we can catch things early. And the earlier we catch it, the better and more successful we can be later on down the road. We'll talk about a weight sheet here in a little bit as far as how much feed at what weights they should be eating, consuming. And that does make a difference on how much we're going to put out there in those feed troughs. So we kind of need to look at that, pay attention to that. We'll talk about a little about body condition as far as what to feed heavier muscled hogs, lighter muscled hogs. We used to always feed by weight. And to a degree, you can still do a little bit of that. But if we happen to buy an extremely heavy muscled hog, we're actually going to want to lower his protein a little earlier in the game, and therefore allowing his skeleton to kind of get more correct and kind of tone down some of that muscle. After we've had those hogs on feed or had them at our house for a month and a half, then we want to train that pig to eat. People say, why in the world do you want to train your pig to eat? Well, the one reason you want to do that is as we get ready to go to a show and we have him there at the show and we put that feed trough in front of him, we want him to eat and we want him to consume that feed quickly. We don't have time for him to sit there and kind of snack around all day. It may sound kind of bad, but to a degree, we do the same thing here at home with our 9-year-old. If he's kind of lollygagging around eating a supper, we turn the timer on the microwave and we give him X amount of minutes, and we need to get it cleaned up. And show pigs, show animals, a lot the same way. We want them to eat morning, we want them to eat night, and we want them to do it in a very efficient fashion, not just kind of snack around all day long. And it kind of helps expand that gut. It trains them to eat for when we're ready at the show. The last thing, and I think this is maybe one of the more important things that we'll talk about, is hogs are no different than us. Each of us wake up in the morning at whatever time to get ready to go to school, and our stomach basically tells us we need to get a bowl of cereal or we need to have something to eat. Somewhere between 11 and 1, each and every one of us are starting to feel like it's about time to eat lunch. And each one of us in the evenings, depending on what time our schedule is or how we normally do it, about that same time, you're going to start feeling like it's time for supper. Our livestock, be it hogs, sheep, cattle, or goats, have the same type of an internal clock. If you feed that animal at 7 o'clock every morning, don't wait on Saturday till 11 to feed him in the morning. Go ahead and get up, feed him at his normal time, and then if you need to go back to bed because you had a football game on Friday night or whatever and it was late, totally understandable. But let's try to keep those hogs on the same schedule, morning and night, when it comes to time for them to eat. When we talk about the basics and things at home that we need to do, weights are very, very important. Basically trying to keep up with that. I like to fill out a chart, and on that chart, we can say that, here we are on February, this date, he weighed this, and we weigh him 1 week later, and we can see how much that hog is growing. And that is very, very important to know. The other thing is to visually look at that hog as we're going through there. Is this one trying to get a little too soft? Is he trying to get a little too fat? And we can basically kind of change things around from that regard. The other thing that we need to look at is, again, trying to train those pigs to eat. A lot of times as we get up there a little ways in weight, what we do is we give them 20 minutes. And what we actually do is we'll either take the feed out of that pan or we'll take the whole pan out, whichever way. And then usually after about 2 or 3 days of that hog understands that he needs to go over there and he needs to eat. So little bitty tricks, little bitty things like that, that can make a huge difference in the long run. We'll talk more again, feed desired body condition. You know, pigs with too much muscle, we're going to feed a little bit of a lower protein, a 14 to a 16 or 17%, if you will, there. Pigs that don't have enough muscle, you feed them an 18 to a 20. Pigs with an average kind of a muscle, those pigs can be on, you know, a 17 to 18, basically the whole way as far as protein. But those ones with too much muscle, we're definitely going to need to lower their protein. Now, how can you do that? There's a lot of different things. We'll talk about feeds that you have available to you from Delmarva here in a little bit, but we can take things like they have a 200 plus feed that is a 17% protein. And basically what we can do is add a little steamrolled oats to that. As we add those steamrolled oats to that, that allows us to drop that protein down to a 14 or down to a 16, if you will. And so we can change some things around just off some base feeds to allow that individual pig to get exactly what he's needing from a body condition standpoint. Hand feed, you know, the other thing that's kind of funny, and we put on here, weigh your feed, because as an ag teacher, I can tell you, every kid has a different size cup, a different size coffee can, things like that. So we need to know exactly how much that container or how much that cup weighs when we talk about the amount of feed that we're putting in there. You know, weigh your feed. You can do it every day at the same time, as long as you know exactly what is in that cup and what it's weighing. That's vitally important. I like to hand feed pigs when they're 60 to 100 pounds, and you know, pigs will grow fast on self feeder, and you kind of need to be cautious of that. Being able, I'm trying to move this up here where I can see a little better. There we go. But we need to kind of monitor them, because a lot of times if a pig is one of those that wants to just really eat day in and day out, or just really consume feed even morning and night, a lot of times we can get them to where they kind of want to bow their hocks out or get too kind of bow-legged, and we know that we're actually feeding too much. Same thing can go if on a self-feeder. You can get some joint and some leg problems if they grow too fast. Ideally, when we talk about pen size and things like that, I've helped kids that have got pens that are 6 foot by 10 foot. I've helped kids that have 6 by 16 pens. Those type of pens work extremely good for either one pig, or if we have two pigs that are very similar size, we can put those in there together. Especially early when you first bring them home or you're first getting them bought. If they're of similar size, does not hurt to run those pigs together. It just kind of encourages one to kind of follow the other, if you will. And so when he gets up to go eat, the other one gets up to go eat, and for drink as well, as far as to get water. Raising a feeder as they grow. And we can say the same thing about a water trough. We want these hogs to get out in the show ring and walk with their head up all the time. Well, if our water trough or our feed trough has got that hog to where he's eating really low on the ground, he's going to want to walk like that. So we usually use some hanging feed troughs on the panels, and we constantly raise those up as those hogs grow to keep them off the ground and to keep their head just a little more propped up, or a little higher, if you will. Here's the kind of the feed intake, if you will, as far as what you'd feed per day. You know, just as a little quick rule of thumb, if they're in there from that 40 to 100 pound range, we're talking about, you know, 1.5 pounds to 4 pounds per day, not per feeding, but per day. And then as we think about 150 pounder, usually 4 to 6 pounds, and then it just continuously goes up. And so as we talked earlier, and we talked about knowing what our pig weighs, that also helps us understand and help us know exactly how many pounds of feed we're actually needing to feed that hog. Because if we look up and we've got a 250 pound hog, and we're still only feeding him 3 pounds in the morning and 3 pounds at night for a total of 6 pounds, we're actually not getting enough nutrition in that hog for him to go ahead and get the muscle shape, get the muscle pop that we're needing to be successful. Here's a little further breakdown, if you will, from 50 pounds all the way up to 300. And as you can see, basically we're talking about on the big end, 3.5% of their body weight, and 4% of their body weight early. And as you can see, the increments as far as the way those hogs, the number of pounds that those hogs are going to need as far as feed to basically keep them on the right track, keep our muscle condition, muscle development going the way it needs to, as well as our body condition. Cannot stress this enough. And I know this sounds very, very simple, but at the same time, clean, fresh water is definitely the key. When you think about muscle, muscle is made up of 75 to 80% water. A lot of times you can put water on their feed, help them with that. The biggest thing, and I don't care if you're talking about obviously in the winter months, people tend to say, well, hog don't need a whole lot of water. It's too cold for him to drink. That's actually opposite. That's actually the exact opposite, because water also helps allow you to regulate your body temperature. So sometimes when it's extremely cold, those hogs will actually drink more water. Flip side, if it's 100 degrees outside, like what it is a lot of days here in Oklahoma in the summer, water is very important, and it needs to be clean, and it needs to be fresh, and it needs to be cool. That water hose that hooks up to your automatic water that's running along the ground outside in the sun that goes to that hog pen, that water is going to be hot. How many of you, and I'm sure you've done it many times out there on the farm or around the house, and you turn the hydrant on, and that first 5 minutes of water coming out of a water hose that's been sitting in the sun, it's scalding hot. It is extremely hot. If we have automatic waters that are hooked up in that type of a scenario, it works good, but we need to think about trying to insulate that, maybe trying to bury it in the ground just a little bit, something in order to keep that direct sunlight off that water hose, because it is going to be very, very hot. If you use barrels, those barrels that are gravity flow, if you will, that have one of the nipple waters on the end of it, those work very good. If you have a single pig and you have one of those 50-gallon water barrels, I encourage you not to fill it up all the way to the top, because it's going to take so long for that one pig to drink all that water that water is going to become stale. It's going to become stagnant. The green stuff growing on the sides of that barrel, the black stuff that's floating around on the top, that's not the best thing for our show pig to be drinking. So I encourage you, even if you have one of those great big barrels, don't fill it up all the way, and take it down once a week, once every other week, clean it completely out, make sure it's clean, make sure that water is fresh. As that water flows through that nipple water, make sure it flows out well. Make sure they're not having to work too hard in order to get it. So those are just some little bitty tidbits. I know that's not a lot on feeding, and yet at the same time, those are some things that are very, very crucial and important for us to be successful. Another thing that is very important is a worming schedule. You can use Safeguard, Dectomax, Ivomec, those type things. What I like to say is worm every 30 days. And to me, one of the easiest things to do is to tell ourselves that the first day of every month, we're going to worm our show pig. It rolls around every month. And if we don't get to it on March 1, we'll get to it on March 2. But that is so much easier than to try to remember that, I wormed him, I think it was like the 15th or the 18th of February, somewhere right around in there. If we just make a mental note that we're going to do that on the first day of every month, then we always are able to get our hogs wormed. That helps take care of mange problems, lice problems, worm problems, anything like that. So you consult your vet, talk to one of them. Those are important things. As things have changed in the last few years, we look at veterinary feed directives, or VFDs. And, sometimes in order to use a feed with a certain medication in it, you need a VFD. Talk to your veterinarian about that. A lot of times we use things within our feeds to try to help build a little immunity, to basically try to take care of some of that and maybe ward off any kind of bugs, try to build some immunity within those hogs. But it's still important to talk to your vet and know about, what you may need, whether that be an injectable or maybe it be something that you need to top dress on the feed that you're currently using. Again, a VFD, veterinary feed directive, talk to your vet about that. More important than anything, check your animals. Make sure you know exactly what you're going to need or what you may be needing, because we want to be able to treat those hogs, whether it be with injectables or whether it be a water medicator or something like that. What is the scenario that you have at home? And again, that kind of goes back to the early plan that we're talked about as far as what all we're going to do. I've utilized barrel waters and had kids either use a medication within that, or maybe we've top dressed it on top of their feed. And then obviously, yes, we've used some injectables from time to time if we have one that gets sick or gets ill. So that's a little bit of the things that we talk about as far as general at home, weighing your pig, those kind of things. The next thing we want to talk about is how to break your pig to show, how to break him, when to do it, how to do it, all those kind of things. Again, if we start out in a pen, whether it be with the marshmallows, the brush, eventually the stick, we're building that confidence. Start into a small confined area like his pen, then we're going to go outside of that pen. Now, with that, I wouldn't necessarily say we're going to take him out and try to walk him all over the 5 acres in the backyard. We're going to start maybe inside the barn or close to the pen and walking around the pen, kind of in a small area, in a confined area. Teach him to walk with his head up. It's a lot of times if they'll come out and they'll kind of still follow that stick with their nose and walk, that's allowing them to learn. Then we'll kind of start working about tapping them underneath their chin from side to side and getting their head to go higher. One thing about exercise and one thing about walking is we're going to do it in somewhat of a gradual manner. I use the analogy a lot, not that I'm ever going to run the Boston Marathon, but you can't wake up on Monday and decide you're going to run the Boston Marathon on Tuesday. First, we're going to have to start with a 100-yard sprint, then get up to a mile, then get up to a couple miles. And that's going to take time. Our show pigs are no different. We may take him outside the first time and walk around his pen or down a little alleyway or something like that for about 5 minutes. After a week, 10 days of that, we're going to start walking for 10 minutes. Then we can build up to 15 minutes. Then we can eventually build up to 20 and 30 minutes so they can handle the length of drive that may have as when we get to that show. So we think of it in that regard as we're building up to that maximum amount of minutes. We're not just going to be able to do that just overnight. We're not going to be able to push him so hard that he gets so tired, so wore out that he also gets mad, because the one thing about breaking a show pig to train him to show and getting him basically in tune with showing and be able to drive for a long time is we always need to end on a good note. We always need that pig to be happy when he goes back to his pen, because if he's not, then he's already going to dread the next time we go down there or the next day to get him out and try to get him to go break to show from the get-go as well. Talking about hair care. When it's warm outside, we're going to start washing. We're going to basically use soaps that do not take the oil completely out of their skin and hair. That's one thing that, not to talk bad, but a lot of times you see people that use dishwash soap to wash their pig with. That really, really strips that oil that is natural oil in their skin and hair. And it can actually dry their skin out more than actually doing a good job as we think about washing them. There's not a magical soap out there. Basically just any kind of mild type of a shampoo or anything like that, whether it be a livestock shampoo or even something cheap at Walmart or one of those type of stores, works very well. One thing after you get done washing that hog is use a skin conditioner. Try to use that as much as possible. Wash 2 to 3 times a week. You can rinse them every day. The biggest thing when we think about washing is you're not going to wash too much. especially if you're not using one of those soaps that takes all the oils out. But it's also important for you to use some type of a conditioner on them as well in order to keep that hair soft, keep that skin in the appropriate condition that it needs to be. When we think about, some people keep their hogs indoors, inside of a barn. If you do that, we have to be very, very cautious about skin color, okay? Those dark colored hogs, Durocs, Hamps, Poland Spots, those dark colored hogs like that, we need to get their skin dark and get their skin really to pop. And the way we do that is they need sunlight. They need sunlight. They need to be outside enough. And a lot of times in the summer months, it's not very hard. Now, when you talk about down here in Oklahoma, where we have a lot of February and March shows, and then we've had 12 days of extremely cold temperatures, and those hogs that are inside the barn, their skin turns very pale. So we've got to work on getting their skin darker, get them outside every chance we can, and let the sunlight kind of do the trick, because it can definitely make a difference in the way they look. You know, that's when we talk about sun tanning them. You know, the other thing about that is if you take like a Hampshire pig, a belted pig that's got a white belt and then the rest of him's black, we don't want to stick him out there so long that, yes, we've darkened up the black, but we've also sunburnt the white. A lot of times when we take those hogs outside and we're going to try to get them suntanned, we will even take a light sunscreen and put over the white part of their belt in order to keep it from actually getting sunburned. So some little tricks there that I think are very, very important to utilize when we talk about hair care and things. One thing I didn't mention earlier is there is a question and answer chat section, if you will, or a question and answer section. If you have anything up there, I just seen a couple questions that come through, and we'll catch those here right quick. How can a pig have too much muscle? A very good question. We want as much muscle as we possibly can have in one. However, if he starts getting real bow-legged or can't move sound enough or take a long fluid type of a stride, that's when we get too much. That's when we've got a little too round kind of a muscle, and that doesn't work for very many judges. Next question is, would you recommend a foamer? You know, I actually have never used a foamer. I'm not saying it's a bad deal, because I've got some friends that actually do utilize those. And yet at the same time, I just personally haven't had any experience with those. But I still like a brush and just like basically a regular old just soap and utilize it, because I do think the old saying, if you haven't wore out your brush by the end of the season, you're not brushing enough. And because every time we brush, we're training that hair to go in the right direction, lay in the right spot, or lay where we're wanting it to. Showmanship skills. When we look at showmanship and what you're going to wear at a show, you know, dress for success, basically nice school clothes. I've never told a kid that he needed to go buy a certain pair of boots or a certain pair of jeans or a certain shirt or anything like that. Wear nice school clothes. Look presentable. You know, try to be clean, have an appropriate footwear. You know, I mean, not saying you need a brand new pair of boots or anything like that, but at the same time, we need to have good kind of shoes on, not maybe the ones that we wear every day out at the farm or anything like that. Have some type of a nice clean footwear on. 12 to 15 foot from the judge is kind of the appropriate distance, and we're going to try to drive that hog. Eye contact. Eye contact is so important. It doesn't matter if you're talking about it in a county fair and there's only 3 or 4 in that class, or you're talking about a big state fair that may have 55 or 60 in a class. If that judge points to you and tells you to go to the pen, we definitely want to be able to see that. Well, in doing that, one of the easiest thing to do is always keep your eye on the judge. Yes, we're trying to work with that hog and make sure he's going in the right direction and got his head in the right position. But we also want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that judge, so we know hopefully he's sending us to the pen. Hopefully that means that we're going to the top of the class. Give a firm handshake. You know, always be courteous. Don't crowd the judge as he's looking at other hogs. And a lot of that, as you're letting that class come in the gate right off the get-go, once you've come in, kind of try to stay at the far end of the other end of the show ring and allow those other exhibitors within that class to kind of have that same open area that you had when you come in, if you came in at the early part of the class. But just being courteous, being nice as we come into that show ring. Look for clear openings and long drives. A lot of times what I used to always say to kids was utilize the whole show ring. Don't be just circling right out there in the middle of the ring. You can either go around the exterior edge or you can cut across the middle, but let's try to go all the way from one end of that show ring to the other. That allows a couple of different things. One, it gets you a good look whenever the judge is looking at, across the ring. And more than anything, it allows that hog to kind of get into a rhythm of his walk. If we're making little short steps and then turning and then short steps and then turning, that hog never really gets out and gets his feet and legs moving in the direction and basically in the pace and in the stride that we're needing to. Show hogs their advantages. A lot of times, if you will sit back and you'll look at your hog at home, whether he's one that's got lots of ham muscle from behind. If he does and he's good on his feet and legs, we're going to try to show that view to that judge all the time. On the other hand, if we've got a bear that's real closed up in his front end, is not very wide between his front legs, well, if that judge asked us to drive our pig to him, then we will. But other than that, we may just try to go around the outside, maybe show a top view or a rear view, something like that, or a side view, and never really drive directly at that judge unless he asks us to. Have fun. You've worked at home, you've put in all the effort. Let's go to the show and let's have a good time. It is one of those things. Now, with that said, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that when we go to the show, that doesn't mean we, don't feed at our appropriate time or we don't make sure we water and do things like that. But we're going to go there to have fun because we put in all the work and all the time at home. So now we can go to the show and show off our project that we've been working on for so long. One thing to think about is we think about, again, water. When we have those hogs at home, we're usually on an automatic water system, whether that be the barrel or whether that be on a cup water. And with that said, when we go to a show, then we don't have that luxury. So we're always going to make sure that we try to give those hogs drinks every 2 to 3 hours while we're at that show in order to keep them hydrated. Because once again, muscle is made up of 65 to 70% water, and we've got to keep it hydrated. We have got to keep plenty of water within that muscle tissue, okay? Judge's opinion again, or a judge's opinion is one man's opinion on that day. Doesn't necessarily make it right, doesn't really necessarily make it wrong, but it is official. We always want to keep that in mind. I've had a chance to judge some shows and things like that. There's been people that have agreed with me and disagreed with me, but at the same time, it's just one man's opinion. And we know that we put in all the effort that we have at home, and therefore we can be successful. Again, bottom line, have fun. Whatever the judge says is what he says, but if we can honestly look in the mirror at home and know that we kept that pig healthy, we brushed him, we walked him, we fed him appropriately, we had him showing the way he needed to show, then we're successful. And it takes lots of work to do that. It takes lots of time in order to do that. But if you can sit back and say that you've done all that, you're definitely going to have a successful show season. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about some feeds and some supplements. And as we think about feed and supplements, first I want to talk about the Delmarva Feeds. The options that you have there is a 40-90 product that's a 19% protein, 6% fat, a 90 to 200 product that's an 18% protein, 5% fat, and a 200 plus that's a 17% protein and 5% fat. All of these feeds utilize our 10-0 premix. Our 10-0 premix is very, very good. It's got all kinds of all-tech technology in it. It includes the total replacement technology. There are things in this premix that tries to help build some immunity. It's a vitamin mineral pack, if you will, that goes into those feeds. We've worked with Delmarva on these rations, and they're able to build these rations for you. And these feeds, I guarantee you, will be very, very good. Many of you who have probably already used these feeds in the past. The one thing I do want to talk to you about is we're going to continue to have these feeds named 40, 90, 90, 200, and 200 plus. And many times you can feed those feeds at that weight range. However, one thing I want you to think about is, as we talked earlier about an extremely heavy muscled pig, okay? If he's really, really round in his muscle and almost got too much muscle, we may want to take him even when he's 150 pounds and put him on the 200 plus product. That way we lower his protein. If we do that, that'll allow him to kind of tone down and not be quite as extreme in his muscle. On the flip side, we may have a lighter muscled hog that's a little greener, a little narrower, if you will, and we may start him on the 40-90 product, and we may actually feed him that 40-90 product all the way up to show day. That allows that muscle to keep continuing to grow and keep continuing to develop. So some little things like that that you can do that can make yourself very successful. Again, it's a matter of looking and evaluating that hog, kind of seeing what the positives are, what some things that we may need to change about each one of them as we go through that process. Try to catch up here just a second. Again, if you have any questions, please put those in the question and answer section, and we'll get to those. And we'll try to have a little bit of time here at the end as well to take any more kind of questions, whether they be about getting a pig prepared or even about products as well. But again, the 10-0 product, the premix product, is what Delmarva uses to build these feeds. And we use this in a lot of different places across the country. We've got many different meals across the country that utilize the 10-0, Texas, Oklahoma, all around the Midwest states that utilize these products and utilize these rations as well. Talking about a few supplements here. Muscle and Motion. Muscle and Motion is a great product to add a little bit of that extra muscle expression. Up high, give them more muscle expression in their ham and their stifle, okay? It can stouten up their upper hip. The one thing about Muscle and Motion that I will tell you is it is not a paling. So I don't know how your shows are there. Some states have kind of rules that you can't use paline or ractopamine and things like that. Others have county fairs that maybe you can, but your state fair can't. Some county fairs say you can't use ractopamine, vice versa. Muscle and Motion is not paling, okay? It will help you get that crisp shape, expression of muscle up high, get more pop and flare and expression to their ham and stifle. It can be simply added to any of those feeds that we just got through talking about. One thing about that I like about Muscle and Motion is if you're going to a jackpot show and we've got 150, 180 pounder, something like that, that we're going to take to his first jackpot, we can add a half to 1 pound of Muscle and Motion to their current feed and get a little extra muscle pop and a little extra muscle shape to get them a little more prepared to go to that jackpot. With that, when we come home, if it's going to be 3 weeks or a month or something like that before we go to our next show, we can easily take that Muscle and Motion product out and then start it again 10 to 14 days before we get to that next show or our target show, whether that be our state fair or county fair, whichever way. Right Factor Multi-Species is the next product. This product is basically designed to increase oxygen blood flow to your muscle tissue. Therefore, it's going to allow you to increase your muscle volume. The other thing about this product is it is recommended 45 days prior to that target show. So we need to be thinking ahead a little bit. This product works very, very good. The one thing that I like about this product is, as it's helping us build a little bit of muscle, it's also ramping up their metabolism and helps them metabolize things so much quicker and so much faster. So if we're trying to add a little fat, we'll talk about fat here in a little bit, different types of fats, it actually will help that hog get fatter faster, if you will. At the same time, if we're trying to pull some fat off and using the product down below, Sculpt, it'll actually help burn that fat. If we're trying to trim him up in his jawline or right behind his front shoulder where we talk about his elbow pocket, it'll help harden up that even faster. Speaking of harden up, taking some fat off, Sculpt. Sculpt is a fat burner. Again, cleaning up that front end or that jowl area, harden up that muscle tone, some things like that. Look over here right quick as we go through here. Got a few questions. Okay, one good question here. How long would you say to walk your pig for? Do you prefer wet feed or dry feed on feeding hogs? Very good questions. How long do you like to walk your pig? Well, some of that depends on the show that you may be going to, if you know. For instance, if we're taking him to a county fair, we know that class is only going to take 10, 12 minutes to go through, and then maybe we come hopefully back for champion drive and things like that. 20 to 30 minutes is a great amount of time because you're able to go bigger or longer than what the drive is actually going to be. We have some shows here like in Oklahoma and as well as in Texas that when we have those classes that have 55 to 60 head in a class, a lot of times those hogs should literally be walking for anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes. So therefore, we try to get ours built up to handle about an hour. So that takes a little more time, particularly if you've got more than 2 or 3 pigs on feed. It takes a long time to get that kind of duration built up. We don't walk them for an hour every day, but every other day we'll have them out there and we'll walk them from 45 minutes to an hour nonstop. That way we build up their endurance. Dry feed versus wet feed. Here's what my little general rule is. We always start out feeding dry feed. We basically just are feeding dry feed in a pan, letting them go to the water trough and things to get a drink. About 2 weeks before we go to our first show is when I'll start wet feeding. Wet feeding not only maybe gives us a little more expansion, a little more depth of body, a little more flank, if you will. The other thing about wet feeding is this. Sometimes when you go to a town, I could tell you some towns here in Oklahoma that I don't even like drinking their iced tea because it tastes so bad. But the water is different. The water is different than what they had at home, whether you're on rural water or you're on well water, but it's going to be different. So if we can get that hog used to drinking water or at least having some water in their feed, it makes that a little bit better when we get to a show. And we can make sure that, again, we're getting water, which is so vitally important in their system while we're at the show. Starshine. Starshine is the next product. This is a multi-species product, okay? You can see on the right kind of a little bit of how much you would want to feed to pigs and the goats and the sheep and all the other species. The biggest thing we're talking about is this is an extra protein supplement, okay? This is going to give you a little extra protein to that hog, which is in turn going to give you a little more top shape, going to give you a little more muscle shape. The biggest thing I can tell you about this is it feeds, if any of you have ever fed a calf manna, it feeds just like a calf manna, okay? As far as protein levels and fat levels and things like that, it's going to help stimulate an appetite as well. It's going to help add muscle shape, as we said, and it actually even looks to a degree like a calf manna pellet. The biggest thing about it, I will say, is, there's some Maltec technology inside of that, which is also going to be great for not only the way it's metabolized, the way it's absorbed, but also those type of properties for gut function are readily available in the Starshine product. When we start thinking about fat, You know, we've got our hog up to 150, 180 pounds, maybe even 200 pounds, and we realize that that hog needs more condition over his rib. He needs more softness to the lower part of his body. He basically just needs to look fatter and put more softness to him. We kind of have some options. The one that I like very much is Stamina. Stamina is basically a fortified wheat germ oil. The one thing about it is it's a light fat source, okay? Where a lot of times you see people make mistakes is they go out there on Monday and they say that, well, my pig needs to be a little bit fatter, so I'm going to add some fat. Then they look at him on Wednesday. Well, he's still not fat enough. I'm going to double the amount of fat that I'm putting in there. Then we go out there on Friday. Nope, still not there. We're going to triple that amount of fat. And then on Saturday or Sunday, our hog's not going to eat any feed. What happened? We basically got his energy up too high. We tried to force feed too much fat to him too fast. So he's backed off on the amount that he's going to eat. The one thing about Stamina is it's a light fat source. Give it some time to work. Reevaluate that hog in a week. Reevaluate him in 10 days and see if we can tell that our fat is starting to kind of take a hold and we're starting to actually get a little bit more cover on him. Some people like a liquid, some people don't, but Stamina is a liquid fat source. That it would kind of be the liquid fat source of choice, if you will, from the Show-Rite line. Fat and Fluffy. Fat and Fluffy is a powdered or a prill fat. This is basically 4 different types of lard as well as coconut oil in there. This fat works very good on show pigs particularly. Kind of puts a little bit of a harder type fat on them, if you will. So it's covering up our rib, but in ways it's a little more of a dehydrated fat or a thicker kind of a fat. So it doesn't get real, for lack of better terms, jiggly looking as far as fat, but it's a hard fat look. That product works very good. Start at 2 ounces twice a day. You know, you can build it up some. Again, build it up gradually. Start him out at 2 ounces morning, 2 ounces at night. Check him in a week. See if we need to add some more. Maybe we're on the right track. Maybe we just need to stay at the 2 ounces twice a day. We also have a milk replacer. Yes, milk replacer works great if you have problems in the farrowing house. You don't have a sow that's not milking or something like that. Mix that up. The unique thing about our milk replacer is it has some Alltech technologies in there for gut health to try to soothe that belly, particularly as we're talking about on those babies. It's got biomass in there to help us in that regard. The other thing about a milk replacer or our milk replacer is it can work as a fat source. If you're showing breeding gilts, a lot of times we're wanting a little softer kind of a look to them. Milk replacer works great to mix in with their feed to give you that extra softness to the lower part of their body and basically just look more like a breeding gilt. When we talk about rib shape and body volume, one product, for instance, and if we were doing a live clinic, and you know, over the years we've done many live clinics, and the neat thing to do usually is to talk about the product called Stretch, because I can take a handful or about a pound of Stretch and I can put it in a pie plate and I can add some water to it. And then we can talk about selection, or we can talk about showmanship or whatever, and you can literally see this product start expanding. And then I can add a little more water to it, and I can talk for another 10 or 15 minutes, and you can see that product expand. It expands 3 times the amount as we get into that inside that animal's belly, and especially when we keep them hydrated or give them lots of water, it's going to expand. It's very high as far as fiber, beet pulp type stuff and things like that, to get that extra expansion, to get that extra grow, if you will, from that product. This product works very good if we're trying to add a little more depth of body or flank or just get them fuller. The other thing about this product is if you go to one of those shows and we've turned in a card and we can only weigh 252 pounds the next day, and we get there that next morning and we weigh 250 pounds before we gave him any feed and before we gave him any water, well, we can use a product like Stretch and we can put that in that hog and then give him some water, and we can get that extra expansion to make him fuller without necessarily adding a tremendous amount of weight to him. So that's a unique thing about stretch. That is another multi-species product that is used very, very heavily in the cattle side, very heavy in the cattle side. Depth and dimension, that is a holding product. We talked earlier in the talk about weighing our hogs, and yet at the same time, I myself even have those hogs that maybe tried to grow a little too fast on me, or they're just going to get too big. If we notice that and recognize that early enough, we can start a product like Depth and Dimension on them. Depth and Dimension is a great holding tool. It allows, with the extra vitamin and trace mineral in Depth and Dimension, for us to be able to kind of give them their daily allowance or give them their daily amount of recommended vitamin, trace minerals, and very, very limited feed. What I mean by that is we take a 240-pound baby or 240-pound pig that ought to be eating 7 to 10 pounds of feed that in a day's time. We can actually feed him 1 pound of feed, 1 pound of Depth and Dimension twice a day, and we can regulate his gain to about 1 pound a day without making him look too hungry, without making him look too stale. Some of them, we can stay on that for a long time. Some of them, at least we can get a week, 10 days of that holding and get us some extra pounds. So again, a couple of different things out of this little topic. Depth and Dimension is a holding tool if we get one that's too big. Second of all, again, how important it is for us to know what our project is weighing as we go through the show season. Now, one product that we want to talk about for sure is Accent, okay? Accent is a multi-species product that basically, in a lot of ways, is going to help us as far as to build gut health, immunity. The other thing it does is it also improves your feed intake. If some of them are a little bit picky as far as being eating, because it's flavored very, very good. The smell is tremendous. It's incredible. But Accent is a multi-species product that can help you build immunity and build gut function. A lot of times when we see hogs that have gotten sick and we're trying to get their gut back working and things like that, it's hard to find something. Accent works very, very good there. We use a lot of this product here at the house ourselves on different hogs throughout the seasons, because it's almost like an insurance policy for me. When I get that hog home or bang from a sale and we get him here and we start him on Accent, that way we know that we're doing some things to try to help that hog's gut stay in working order. The other thing, again, building immunity. You moms and dads that may be listening in on this, we take our kid to the doctor when he's sick. What's the first thing they tell us to do? Try to get him home, get him something to eat, get him something to drink, okay? Our livestock are no different. When they're sick, we have got to get their gut back working as far as getting them to eat and consume, and we've got to get them to drink water. If there's any way in the world any of us would be able to try to keep our kids from getting sick, is the same way that I look at our show pigs. We want them to try to have the best chance to have some built-in immunity. We want to try to keep their gut in as working order from the get-go as possible. Therefore, we're going to try to add this to their ration from the get-go. Again, an appetite enhancer, stamina. Stamina, yes, it's a light fat source, but the other thing about stamina is, once again, they like the taste. They like that wheat germ oil, and they can work very, very good as far as being a palatability increase or increase the palatability for them of wanting to eat. A couple other products that I want to touch on is Swell. Swell is a product that works very, very good on show day or in show day prep. Use it 1 to 3 days out before the show. I recommend 3 days. There's a little 3-ounce scoop in that. We feed 3 ounces morning and we feed 3 ounces night. And we do that 3 days prior to the show. What that does is it allows that moisture or that water, if you will, to hydrate their muscle, to give them that bigger kind of a top look, more shape kind of a look. The other thing that it does is when you talk about the upper rib shape in that hog, it's going to make it more barrel, more round, if you will. So that is one thing that judges look for a lot, is they're wanting kind of a round rib cage type hog. And if we can do that with Swell and help and intensify that, very, very important. So Swell is kind of a show day supplement. The other product that can be a show day supplement, but I also have in the barn daily, is Exhale. Exhale, the easiest way for me to tell you about Exhale is think about putting about 200 cough drops in your mouth at one time. Almost takes your breath away, but at the same time, what it does, it opens up your sinuses, it opens up your lungs, and it allows you to breathe. Many, many times when we have hogs that we've purchased or we've brought in, something gets sick. It happens a lot, okay? The biggest thing is if we get some of those that get extremely sick, a lot of times we have some lung damage. And if we have lung damage, and then later on down the road, we're asking that hog to walk 20, 30, 40 minutes, he's going to get short of breath. He's going to get tired. He's going to get wore out because he's not getting enough oxygen. He's not getting enough air into his lungs. So we have Exhale around the house all the time. That way, if something gets sick, maybe we've had to consult with our veterinarian and get us an antibiotic. With that said, we're also going to give him a little bit of Exhale in his mouth to allow it to open up his airway, okay? I grew up with asthma. I can tell you, anytime I got sick, my mom tried to put me on that breathing machine, a nebulizer, I guess is what it's called, but to basically open up my lungs, open up my head, allow me to get some better airflow, okay? It's great to use at the show, and that's why it's a show day supplement as well. If we have one of those that maybe we know it struggles a little bit from time to time with his breathing, we're going to give him that about 10 minutes before he goes to the show ring. Open up his airway, allow him to breathe. One question that I always get is, can you do it multiple times that day? Yes, you can. Now, not necessarily do we do it, right now, 10 minutes before he goes to the ring, and then he shows, and then all of a sudden, as soon as he comes out of the ring, we give him more. But if you need to show him that morning, and say we show him and he happens to be champion or he gets along and we're going to take him back for grand drive or even showmanship later on in the day, 4 or 5 hours later, we can give him Exhale again. Again, open up that airway, allowing that hog to just perform better because he can breathe better. The biggest thing, once again, as we kind of go through and kind of put everything together, if you will, is, take the little steps. Take the little things that it will actually make the biggest difference later on. And what I mean by that is our pens, making sure they're clean. One thing we didn't talk about when we're talking about clean pens is ammonia smell. Ammonia smell is not good. It's not good on our hogs' lungs. It's not good for them to be breathing. So taking care of those pens, keeping those clean is very, very important. First and foremost, most important thing is water. Make sure that water is fresh. Make sure that water is clean, and make sure it's readily available to them all the time. Whether it's 20 below or it's 105, we've got to make sure that that water is fresh, clean, and always available to them. Remember what else I said about making those pigs, they need to be our buddy. They need to be our friend. And then later we're going to train them like athletes. But we have to get a little bit of a trust in between all of us, particularly the shower and the pig. If they can be buddies and they can be friends and eat some marshmallows along the way and get to know each other, then it makes the process so much more easier later on down the road. Talking again about light muscled, heavy muscled hogs, evaluate that hog. We're actually going to have another swine seminar here coming up here before long, and we'll talk a little more in depth and have some pictures and some examples about lighter muscled hogs, medium muscled hogs, heavier muscled hogs, and what kind of a protein that you need to feed those hogs. Okay. Again, those products that Delmarva have utilizes our 10-0 premix to make those feeds. A 19, an 18, and a 17%. Those are rations that we've helped them with, and those rations are very, very good and will allow you to be successful. With that, that is the end of there. I'm going to try to, Zach, you may have to jump on here. I'm trying to get to any kind of questions. And for some reason, it won't bring my bar from up top. Yes, sir.
Ron, it looks like we just have one other question that you haven't answered yet.
Okay.
This is from Caleb. It looks like he asked, could Exhale be illegal at some shows?
No, absolutely not. Exhale it's an all natural product. There is nothing, we have never ran across a show at all that tried to, there's nothing in it that would be bad from a testing standpoint or anything like that. And we've never ran into any problems with any show saying that you couldn't use Exhale. So great question, but no, that should not be a problem at anywhere. One thing we didn't mention that I forgot to, I've got a side note over here and I just noticed it, but one thing we didn't mention is for Delmarva, there's going to be different ones of us from the Show-Rite team that jump on here and do each species. And those are every Thursday night here for a couple of weeks. So pay attention to that. Make sure, because I know there's probably some of you out there that are multi-species families. You may have hogs and goats at home, or you may have hogs and cattle at home, or vice versa, or anything. But each Thursday night, we're going to do a little segment like this, talk about some little tips, some little tricks, some feeding, how to take care of things at home, and try to just give you some pointers and help you be more successful. My question deal finally come up. There we go. Okay. The other thing I will mention, in case there's any other questions out there, is from the Show-Rite team or the Show-Rite group on our website, showrite.com. There is a section on there called Ask the Experts, and you can actually send in a question or an email, if you will, that will come to one of us, and we can get in correspondence with you. If any time you have any kind of questions, feel free, contact myself. My number's on the website. You can text me, call me, email me, any of that. A lot of times we get videos of pigs, we get weights of pigs, things like that, asking for a little bit of a help on the side. That's what we're here for. We'll be more than willing to help you on any of the species. Just feel free to reach out to us at any time. Again, we've got Billy Sutton along with us here, and those guys do a great job there at Delmarva making feeds. Those guys will be able to take care of you on any of those products. And again, we so much appreciate Billy for reaching out to us and allowing us to be able to jump out here and help you guys, and hopefully give you a few little tricks or a little bit of a training, if you will. And not that many of you aren't already successful, because I know you are, but at the same time, maybe some little tidbits that maybe you picked up on along the way.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for sharing all this information and knowledge with us tonight. I hope everybody took something away from it that they can apply, at home and in their barn. And as Ryan mentioned, there are going to be a few other webinars coming up on the next few Thursday nights. Next week, we're going to cover sheep. And then on March 11th, we're going to have goats. And on the 18th, we're going to do cattle. So feel free to share this with any 4-H groups or FFA groups. Everybody's welcome to attend these seminars. And as a reminder for any youth that participates and watches all 4 webinars in the series, we're going to be getting you your choice of some Delmarva Feed swag, whether it be a nice hooded sweatshirt, hat, long sleeve t-shirt, or short sleeve t-shirt. So spread the word, the more the merrier, and hopefully everybody's going to have a successful project and show season this year.
You bet. One other thing about the supplements, as we went through those, and I know we kind of sped through those supplements fairly quickly, but on our Show-Rite website also, if you go to products, on many, if not all of those, there is also not only information there, but there's also a little short video talking about how to use those products and where they work. So feel free, log on to there. You know, so for some other training tips as well, if you go to Stock Show Classroom on our website, there's even lengthier things about talking about pen size on hogs and all that, as well as exercise, more things on that. So there's lots of little bitty training sessions there on Stock Show Classroom that our all-tech guy there, Zach, he's done a phenomenal job of putting those things together and applying those to the website to where you can view those as well.
Okay. We'll give a few more seconds here for additional questions. If anybody has any, feel free to get those typed in. Otherwise, if there's anything we can do to help, feel free to reach out to us at Delmarva Feed. Phone number is 410-348-2505. The website's delmarvafeed.com. And we're here to help and answer all your questions. If we don't know the answers, we certainly know who to contact to get them for you. So, thank you everyone for watching. Ryan or Zach, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but from everybody at Delmarva Feed, thank you very much. And thank you to all the viewers out there watching.
You bet. Thank you, Billy, for allowing us to help on this. And thank you all you guys out there that, you know, tuned in tonight to watch this. And then one question just come in: how young is too young to start giving them marshmallows? Well, you know, honestly, when we do things here at our house or anything, most of the time those pigs are in that, you know, 45 to 60 pound range, or especially the ones that we purchased from maybe another breeder or whatever and brought to the house. Those are the ones that we want it to be as smooth or as easy of a transition, or just let them know that they're going to be okay. You know, don't give them a whole bag of marshmallows that night, but a lot of times we'll give the kiddo, you know, 5 or 6 of those little bitty small marshmallows and let him kind of play around with that pig, you know, in the evenings when he gets home from school and things. So, but you can start with marshmallows early. Like I say, it's a treat. Not necessarily do we ever give them enough that ever get very full on, but works as a treat and kind of helps build that trust.
All right. Well, very good. I think that's going to be all for this evening, Ryan. And I guess, Zach, you'll end this. Everybody, thank you very much. Tune in next week. Get registered for each species, for each upcoming webinar. Each one you have to register for species specific. So just because you would have registered for this one this evening, you'll need to register for the other ones individually. So we hope to see you then.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.